Good evening to you. Thank you for being with us tonight on KUTV's news at night 9. Trust you're doing good. We'll begin with the highlights. Veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho abducted then released with the police, citing it as a case of mistaken identity. The Lands Committee decries budget cuts to the Ministry of Lands, arguing that the move will cripple its operations. A third impeachment bid looms for Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza as she is accused of abuse of office and financial misconduct. And in our special story tonight, we take a look at the endometriosis medical marvels, a condition that affects 1 in 10 women, but scientists are yet to find the cure.
This is KUTV Primetime News with Yvonne Kemuma.
On the other end is John Opio tonight. You can always stream this conversation on YouTube at KUTV News Kenya. Engage us on X at KUTV_Kenya. Veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho has been released after being arrested. Gaitho went to Karen police station to seek refuge from a suspicious trail on him when he was ambushed and abducted. The police have said Gaitho was arrested mistakenly on mistaken identity, a notion that he has shrugged off. Civil societies and media organizations have condemned the prosecution of journalists.
Wednesday morning, the country woke up to the deafening news of an alleged abduction of veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho at the Karen police station in Nairobi. Moments later, videos resurfaced showing how the journalist was dramatically taken into custody and bungled into this white probox, registration number KBC 725J.
This morning, shortly after I left home around 8:05 a.m., I was blocked by a civilian car.
According to Gaitho, he was taken to the DCI headquarters where the police realized that they mistook him for another suspect of a similar name. The journalist, however, rebuffed these claims, saying the government made no mistake.
As far as I know, does not drive a car that resembles mine. It is me they were looking for. It is me they were trailing. Does this cow you? No, we cannot be cowed. I think we were there during the struggle against the one-party dictatorship. If we resisted Moi, who are these ones?
Gaitho's mysteries come barely 24 hours after Catherine Wanjiri, a MediaMax reporter, was shot during demonstrations in Nakuru yesterday. Today, journalists in different parts of the country took to the streets in revolt.
It is worth noting that Ms. Wanjiri was donning the Media Council of Kenya press jacket, which is clearly visible when she was shot twice in the thigh, which raises questions on whether the shooter was hell-bent on harming the journalist intentionally.
The Independent Policing Authority IPOA has launched investigations into the mistaken arrest of Macharia Gaitho and the shooting of Catherine Wanjiri. Muneneweru, KUTV.
Amos Mamanyi and Moses Ogimbo, who are arrested for handling a phone belonging to a quarry murder victim, Roslyn Akoth, have been granted 28 days custodial orders by the Makadara law courts. Meanwhile, a team of homicide detectives and CSIS colleagues visited Collins Jumaisi Kaluma's house in Mukuru, Kwanjenga, revealing blood-stained items such as a pillowcase, t-shirt, hammer, pliers, and knives. Investigators Investigations are still ongoing at the suspect's home and the dumping sites, remaining an active crime scene. Through a statement on X, the DCI reassured Kenyans of its commitment to conducting thorough investigations and observing high standard of professional ethics. The Law Society of Kenya today, through legal representation in court, came to the rescue of a number of protesters arrested during yesterday's anti-government protests. In Nairobi, LSK represented 125 protesters held at the Central Police Station overnight, despite discussions held earlier on. The protesters appeared before City Hall Court, as Jael Nyabuti reports.
The 125 protesters arrested during demonstrations were earlier today arraigned at City Hall Court after the LSK team camped till late on Tuesday at Central Police Station, negotiating for their release. However, the OCS held the protesters overnight on dubious charges despite the efforts made regarding their release. The representation in court for the arraignment of all arrested protesters aims to ensure the rights are upheld and defense against these spurious claims are provided. Also, the LSK team has made efforts across all 23 counties that reported demonstrations to ensure no protesters are retained unlawfully, securing the release of protesters in Kitengela, Kahawa and Mombasa. Earlier today, LSK was at the Central Police Station where they found peaceful protesters falsely charged with mugging and demanded Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to stop supporting false charges. Meanwhile, protesters continue to decry harassment after one was shot dead and at least 3 injured during yesterday's anti-government protests.
Tulikuwa tumepanga tukwe street na tumekuja street. Lakini wakati tumeingia street nimepata kwamba wale ambao wamekuja si wale watu ambao tumepanga na si vile tulikuwa tumepanga tuweze kukutana. Maandamano yetu yalikuwa yawe maandamano ya amani ambayo tunaweza kukumbuka kwa nini kuna vifo ambavyo vilitendeka vya ndugu wetu hapa nyuma na wengine wako hospitalini bado wamelazwa, wako ICU. Tuweze kutuma message kwa county tuwaambie kwamba tunahitaji haki yao. Alafu pia hata kwa serikali kuu waweze kuwa wanawajibika kwa kazi yao.
The LSK, on the other hand, continues to urge members of the public to continue bringing information to their attention to enable immediate action. Nyabuti Jael, KUTV.
Members of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Lands have decried crippled operations at the Ministry of Lands following the proposed budget cuts to the Ministry of Land and the National Land Commission. Yvonne has the story.
No sooner had the National Treasury cut Kenya's coat according to its size than the lamentation began. The first to complain about the budget slash is members of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Lands. According to the Lands Committee, the cut could cripple ministries' operations.
The Migingoira dispute, the Limit Triangle, all those disputes. Then we say that the budget for international boundaries, we cut 8 to 0. Chairman, I'm a bed thrust. And this is the minister that gives a lot of money to Exchequer. I think we need to be fair to the ministry.
Led by committee's chairperson and Mugrango lawmaker Joash Nyamoko, the committee said that the proposed budget cuts may not only cripple normal operations but also hamper routine activities in the State Department for Lands and Physical Planning and the Office of the National Land Commission, which generates revenue for the Exchequer.
Did Treasury consider the ministries that generate income, the activities? Because a ministry like energy, we know we pay electricity, we pay for everything. That just ones are maybe are able to sustain themselves. Why don't you want to let this ministry maintain itself? Because it generates money and give it to the users.
As a ministry, when they were doing this, didn't you sit? Did they just give you those savings and that was it? That the only response you gave was to write back. I thought we should have consultations across.
In an address to the nation followed by deadly Gen Z protests, President William Ruto ordered budget cuts on non-essential expenditures as part of austerity measures after the Finance Bill of 2024 failed to see the light of the day. The Ministry of Education and Energy are among the biggest casualties in the mini-budget. Overall, the Supplementary Estimates No. 1 of 2024-2025 proposes to reduce approved government budget estimates by 121.8 billion shillings. As the country prepares to adjust to the new norm, the committee has resolved to hold another sitting with the National Treasury counterparts over the matter. Auma Evans for KUTV, Nairobi.
Siaya High Court presiding judge Daniel Ogiembo was this morning found dead at his residence in Siaya town. The discovery was made by his driver, who became alarmed when the judge did not answer morning calls. Police have initiated an investigation to the circumstances surrounding his death. Leaders led by Siaya Governor James Orengo and LSK boss Faith Odhiambo celebrated Judge Ogiembo as a man who leaves behind a legacy of justice and respect. The body was moved to Siaya Referral Hospital mortuary, and autopsy will be done for further investigation. Now, Kawira Mwangaza is once again in the spotlight as she faces a new impeachment motion that marks the third time the governor is battling to stay in office amidst allegation of gross misconduct and abuse of office.
Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza is once again a troubled woman after nominated member and deputy leader of the majority party, Zipporah Kinya, moved a new motion to impeach her. This motion includes allegations of illegal appointments and dismissals, financial misconduct, and misleading the public. One specific charge involves the revocation of CPA Virginia Kawira Miriti's appointment as Secretary of the Meru County Public Service Board without proper authorization, contravening the law.
Brought by 1,611 members of the public, and statements have been sought by members of the County Assembly on the various gross violations and instance of abuse of office by the governor. Number 2 is misappropriation and misuse of county resources. The governor has grossly violated, among others, Article 10, 73, 201, 226, 5 and 232 of the Constitution.
For the third time, Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza faces an impeachment motion following allegations of gross violations of the Constitution, various national and county laws, and abuse of office. This new motion comes less than a year after she survived a similar bid in November last year, when a majority of the 47 senators failed to uphold any of the 7 charges cited against her by the County Assembly of Meru. In December 2022, the governor was impeached by the County Assembly, but an 11-member Senate Special Committee appointed to prove the grounds for her impeachment submitted a report stating that none of the charges leveled against her was proven. Ernest Karani, KUTV.
Thank you, Ernest Karani, for that report. So now, at this juncture, we will be taking our first break here on KUTV's News at 9. But don't go anywhere. You can always continue engaging with us on our social media platform on X at KUTV_Kenya, and we are streaming on YouTube at KUTV News Kenya. We'll take that break.
What are some of the ways through which you can develop these skills so that you are comfortably fitting into the job?
You have to put yourself in positions where you are uncomfortable in the sense that you are not clear about what to do.
Because I used to work a corporate job before. So when I left, I happened to visit someone's farm. around this area.
So this project is called Security Breach Detector and Readiness Familiarize. It is meant to be used to detect, detonate explosives.
We'll tackle all the tough issues, discuss all the weird moments, and hopefully share a few laughs along the way.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Yvonne Kemuma.
And we are back. Thank you for keeping it KUTV. I'm Yvonne Kemuma. Our sign language interpreter is John Opio. We'll continue. Now we'll move on to a story of resilience and hope in endometriosis care. Endometriosis, a condition where tissue similar to the lining inside the uterus grows outside of it, plagued Anne Mahero and Elsie Wandera for years before diagnosis. In the following special report prepared by our health reporter Kipto Hilda, Dr. Muteshi Charles, an endometriosis and fertility doctor, expound further on endometriosis and its effects on patients. Currently, there is no definitive cure for endometriosis.
Anne Mahero, an endometriosis warrior and a nurse in profession, had to undergo pain for the longest period possible due to the socialization of pain in the society. With endometriosis, pain became part of her life and hindered her day-to-day activities when she was needed. However, she fights with it till she becomes a warrior.
So I constantly had painful periods growing up, even in my teenage years, particularly in high school. I think high school was the worst. While I was doing my KCSE, I remember it was history paper 2. I passed out, and you bet my principal thought, this girl is not ready for this exam. She's just freaking out. It was terrible.
Through an accident, she finally got her medical report that she had endometriosis.
Funny story. It was a bike accident. I was crossing my avenue and a bike hit me. It was riding from the opposite direction. So what happened after the accident is I developed some pain around my abdomen, and when I went to the hospital, they did an ultrasound. They didn't find anything abnormal in the ultrasound other than what seemed to be some pooling of blood around my umbilical stump. They had a test done on that, a biopsy, and from that is when they diagnosed that I had endometriosis.
Now, up to 10% of women of productive age in Kenya has endometriosis. Often, endometriosis is mistaken for other diseases since it affects different parts of the body, and thus doctors ironically end up treating the wrong diagnosis.
In 2017 is when I had my first chest x-ray, and it showed that I had a collapsed lung. And the doctors were asking me funny questions. They were asking if I had a violent boyfriend, if I had been hiking up Mount Kenya recently, things that would trigger the collapse of a lung.
Ladies suffering from endometriosis live with it 6 to 10 years before actual diagnosis, which end up suffering a great deal. Elsie Wandera, an endometriosis warrior and the founder of Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, had to bear the pain for more than 10 years.
I started presenting the symptoms for endometriosis when I was 13 years old. I think around 13, 15, between that age, which was the same time that I started my periods. And so it took about 10 years, over 10 years, for me to get diagnosed with endometriosis. By the time I was 26, that's when I knew what I was suffering from.
An endometriosis and fertility expert, Dr. Charles Muteshi, further sheds light on what endometriosis is.
When you look at the womb lining, the womb is the uterus, or where the baby would be, but women menstruate from the womb every month. So the lining cells can find themselves in other parts of the body. And if that's the case, they can cause bleeding and pain, and that's what we call endometriosis.
A chronic pain during menstruation is a key symptom of endometriosis.
I used to have terrible, horrible cramps.
Menstrual pain is often mistaken for a normal kind of pain, but there is a thin line between a usual pain and a chronic and acute pain caused and brought about by endometriosis.
Other symptoms include heavy bleeding during periods or between periods, trouble with infertility, bloating, nausea, and fatigue.
Endometriosis can present in variable ways, and it affects different parts of the body. So if it's in the pelvis, it can be around the fallopian tubes, around the bowel, the bladder, or the ovary. It can also be in the chest or the belly button or umbilicus. Those are the commonest parts in which you find endometriosis.
The pain can, however, be managed in 3 ways depending on the type of endometriosis. The treatments include hormonal therapy, where drugs modify the hormonal environment by suppressing the ovarian activities, surgical treatment, where the lesions are eliminated, and through the painkillers. The treatment is, however, tailored to each patient's need.
The treatment of endometriosis is individualized, and what that means is that every patient who has endometriosis is evaluated by the doctor who is specialized, and their treatment is tailored to their needs specifically.
Struggles and uncertainties knocked in Anne's life, and change was inevitable.
Part of the things I've had to change is choosing to live more intentionally, appreciating each day as it comes. I've learned to take more precaution when it comes to the things that I eat, particularly plants or vegetables and fruits that are known to cause inflammation.
Epidemiological data suggests that the risk factors to endometriosis include early menstrual period, shorter cycle length, long and heavy menstrual flow, and reduced gravidity, which is a number of times a female has been expectant. Moreover, some endometriosis cases have been linked to infertility.
Most girls who have endometriosis will end up having children, so their fertility is not significantly compromised. However, there will be a few of them in which, if the endometriosis is so extensive that it's damaged their ovaries or their fallopian tubes, they may have challenges getting pregnant.
However, there is hope for the endometriosis patients brought about by endometriosis organizations in partnership with hospitals such as Aga Khan University Hospital. One of the organizations heavily creating impact on the patients' lives is the Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, founded by Elsie Wandera. Being an endometriosis survivor, she saw the need of having such an organization.
I felt that I was not getting enough answers about how to manage this condition called endometriosis, and therefore the need to ensure that the women who continue to suffer in silence, that their voices are heard, and that they also get directed to the best care in order for them to manage the condition.
Through the Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, many endometriosis patients have found refuge and their voices have been heard.
Here we can share our experiences, encourage each other, learn about the symptoms that we have, get more information on them.
The foundation, having a global position, is well represented in the World Endometriosis Organization, having Elsie Wandera, an endometriosis warrior, in the steering committee.
That's again why I was just like, we need to figure what this is, how is it that we live, that was, we were in the 21st century and we still did not have answers about why millions of women continue to suffer.
The month of March marks the Endometriosis Month awareness, where the endometriosis advocacy organizations focus on the well-being of the patients.
One of the projects that we have, but we want to, do a fresh campaign around it, is the EndoBuddy system, where we pair people, women who are part of our Telegram and support group, with someone who is within your proximity, geographically.
Unfortunately,
Endometriosis patients have to dig from their pockets since insurance companies rarely cover endometriosis. This is credited to endometriosis not being categorized as a non-communicable disease to qualify for a subsidized medication and treatment through the NHIF.
You'll take drugs this month and they'll allow you to take them. Next month, you'll go and get drugs. They say, no, these are hormonal. They were still hormonal last month. But I think sometimes that understanding that, yes, they are hormonal they are hormonal drugs, yes, but I'm taking them as part of treatment of a condition, that is key.
This has caused a great challenge to the endometriosis patients.
If I get a prescription, that says I need 3 months of hormone, suppression treatment, or drugs rather, the hospital will say this is not something that the insurance companies will pay, and therefore you have to pay out of pocket. And again, it is not as cheap as we imagine.
A clarion call is now given to the government and research institutions to chip in, fund patients, and find the cause of endometriosis, the cure, and a better way to manage it.
Many insurance covers, or I would say just the healthcare system in Kenya generally needs to give endometriosis a lot more importance, because it's one of many chronic conditions that affect the population.
It takes 6 to 10 years for women living with endometriosis to get an actual diagnosis. Concerns have been raised concerning this chronic disease being under-researched. As this continues, time will tell whether or not the disease will be better managed. Kipto Hilda, KUTV, Nairobi. True to that bumper right there, we are now in the sporting world. Football Kenya Federation Premier Champions Gor Mahia and FKF Mozartbet Cup champions Kenya Police FC and Harambee Stars will now host their AFCON home matches at the Nyayo and Kasarani stadiums. The two stadiums had earlier been closed off for renovations but failed to meet the stipulated standards on time for the Kenya vs Cote d'Ivoire 2026 AFCON qualifiers.
Nyayo and Moi International Stadiums will host the AFCON as well as the CAF Confederation slated for this August. The two stadiums had earlier been blacklisted after failing to meet FIFA standards, despite being closed for renovations early in 2023. The latest CAF inspection tour earlier this week approved the progress made so far, with Nyayo Stadium expected to be completed within the next 4 weeks. The PS who accompanied the team that has been in the country since Friday last week identified critical areas of concern at the Nyayo Stadium, being changing rooms, floodlights, scoreboard, and the drainage system, and the improvement of the media center from level 2 to level 3. Sports Permanent Secretary Engineer Peter Tum assured Kenyans that the contractors are progressing well and Nyayo will be 100% ready in about 4 weeks, ensuring that Gor Mahia, Police FC, and Harambee Stars will therefore play their matches at home. This comes barely 2 months after Harambee Stars were forced to play their 2026 World Cup qualifier match against Burundi and Ivory Coast at the Bingu National Stadium in Lilongwe, Malawi, due to a lack of approved facility, creating uproar among Kenyan fans and football stakeholders. The refurbishment of the stadiums are being undertaken by China Road and Bridge Corporation, who are also charged with constructing 4 training venues and 2 stadiums in readiness for the 2027 African Cup of Nations, which Kenya will co-host with Uganda and Tanzania. For KUTV Sports, I'm Sam Metiaki.
Well, I trust you've been well informed here on KUTV's News at 9. From me to you, I say thank you for being with us tonight. News reaching us, our desk just now, is that the president has appointed Musalia Mudavadi as the acting CS on all ministries. We'll follow up on more on that story in subsequent bulletins. With that, I will call it a night. I'm Yvonne Kemuma. Our sign language interpreter is John Opio. Thank you for being with us. See you next time.